The first thing I noticed was his cologne, not on him, on her. My sister was wearing my fiancé's favorite shirt, the blue Oxford I'd given him for Christmas, and his signature scent clung to her skin like a claim. They both froze when I walked into our bedroom, my carry-on bag still trailing behind me. I'm Yara, and this is how I learned that being the good sister means absolutely nothing. I can explain, Peyton stammered, reaching for a t-shirt. Raquel just sat there on our bed, twirling her hair around her finger, the same way she did when we were kids, and she'd broken something of mine on purpose. How long? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. It just happened, they said in unison, then looked at each other. That shared glance told me everything. This wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. I was supposed to land tomorrow, I said, focusing on the shirt pulled at Raquel's feet. Guess the earlier flight was lucky. Yara, please, Peyton started, but I held up my hand. Don't. I turned to leave, but Raquel's voice stopped me. We didn't want you to find out like this, she said softly. Mom and Dad already know. We were trying to figure out how to tell you. The room tilted. Mom and Dad know. They understand, Raquel continued, standing up. Sometimes these things happen. People fall in love unexpectedly. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Love? You're calling this love? It is love, Peyton insisted. We never meant to hurt you, but what? But my little sister was just too irresistible? But betraying me was worth it? Don't be dramatic, Raquel sighed. This isn't about you. 3 days later, I sat in my parents' living room, surrounded by concerned faces. Mom, Dad, Aunt Susan, even my cousin Roslyn, though she wouldn't meet my eyes. An intervention, they called it. Sweetheart, Mom began, perched on the edge of her chair like she was addressing a difficult client. We know this is hard, but we need to think about the family. The family, I repeated. Yes, Raquel and Peyton, they're getting married. At the estate. In 3 months. The room went silent. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking, the same one that had witnessed countless family moments. Now it was counting down to this. They want to use Grandpa Fred's estate? For their wedding? Dad cleared his throat. It's the family estate, honey, and it would mean so much to everyone if you could be supportive. Supportive, I echoed. The word tasted like ash. Be the bigger person, Mom urged. Like you always are. Help with the planning. Show everyone that our family stays strong, no matter what. I looked around the room at these people who'd watched me grow up, who'd seen me build a life with Peyton, who knew how much I'd loved him. They were all nodding, waiting for good, reliable Yara to do the right thing. Okay, I said finally, I'll help. The relief was palpable. Mom started talking about color schemes and guest lists, but I wasn't listening. I was thinking about the dusty briefcase I'd found in the attic last week while looking for old photos to return to Peyton. Grandpa Fred's briefcase, full of property documents I hadn't looked at yet. I'll even host it, I added, watching their faces brighten. I'll make sure everything is perfect. Later that night, alone in my childhood bedroom, I opened the briefcase. The trust instrument was dated 20 years ago, signed in my grandfather's precise handwriting. As I read, my hands started shaking. The estate wasn't the family's anymore. It was mine, all mine. I thought about Raquel in Peyton's shirt, about my parents' practice speeches, about being told to be the bigger person. I looked at the document again and smiled. They wanted the bigger person? They were about to get exactly what they asked for. These documents appear to be in perfect order, Mark said, adjusting his reading glasses. The family attorney's office smelled like old leather and coffee, exactly as it had when Grandpa Fred used to bring me here as a child. So it's real. I leaned forward. The trust is valid? Mark nodded, spreading the yellowed papers across his desk. Your grandfather modified the trust 20 years ago, making you the sole beneficiary upon his death. The estate, the grounds, everything, it's yours, has been since he passed. But my parents have been managing it without legal authority, he finished. They assumed, as most people would, that the property passed to your father. Fred never told anyone about the changes. I sat back, remembering the last conversation I'd had with my grandfather. You see things others miss, little owl, he'd said, using his nickname for me. Remember that when the time comes. There's more, Mark continued, pulling out another document. This clause here gives you complete discretion over usage fees. You can charge whatever you deem appropriate for events held on the property. My hands didn't shake this time as I took the paper. And if those fees aren't paid, you'd have every right to take legal action. He paused, studying me. Yara, I've known your family for 30 years. This situation with your sister and Peyton is exactly why Grandpa Fred left me the estate, I finished. He knew something like this would happen eventually. What do you plan to do? I stood up, gathering the documents. First, I need copies of everything. Then I need you to keep this quiet until I say otherwise. And then I'm going to help plan my sister's perfect wedding. That evening, I drove to the estate. The iron gates still creaked the same way they had when I was little, running alongside Grandpa Fred as he inspected the grounds. The old house loomed ahead, its windows gleaming in the sunset. My phone buzzed, a text from Raquel. Mom says you're helping with the wedding. I knew you'd understand. Meeting with the florist tomorrow at 10. Don't be late. I walked up to the front door, using my key, to let myself in. The foyer echoed with memories. Grandpa Fred teaching me about the architectural details, showing me old blueprints, telling me stories about every piece of history these walls held. I knew you'd come here tonight. I spun around. Rosalind stood in the doorway, arms crossed. How? Because it's what I would do, she stepped inside. I saw your face during that family meeting. You're planning something. I studied my cousin, remembering how she'd been the only one who didn't pressure me to be understanding about Raquel and Peyton. Want to see something interesting? I pulled out the trust documents. Rosalind read quickly, her eyes widening. Holy shit, she whispered. This changes everything. Only if I want it to. She looked up at me. And do you? I walked to the library, Grandpa Fred's favorite room. The place where Raquel and Peyton wanted to have their rehearsal dinner, where she'd probably wear one of our grandfather's medals as an accessory, like she'd been talking about. You know what Raquel told me last week? I said, running my fingers along the spines of old books. She said she and Peyton had been fighting their feelings for months, that they tried to resist but couldn't, that it was fate. Bullshit, Rosalind snorted. Exactly. I turned to face her. Everyone keeps telling me to be the bigger person, to step aside gracefully, to put the family first. And I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to help plan this wedding. I'm going to smile and coordinate and make everything perfect. I pulled out the clause about usage fees. And then I'm going to show them exactly what being the bigger person means. Rosalind was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Need an assistant? You know this won't end well for anyone. She shrugged. Sometimes things need to break before they can be fixed properly. I looked around the library, at all the history my grandfather had preserved, at all the lessons he'd tried to teach us. Then let's start planning my sister's perfect wedding. I smiled, and for the first time since finding Raquel in my bedroom, it reached my eyes. The roses have to be blush pink, not regular pink, Raquel insisted, waving her phone at the florist. like in this Pinterest board. See the difference? I sat at the estate's dining room table, quietly documenting every cost in my separate spreadsheet while my sister terrorized another vendor. 3 hours into wedding planning, and we were already at 5 figures just for flowers. Of course, the florist nodded, shooting me a desperate look. I'd been handling all the contracts and payments, playing the role of supportive sister so perfectly that even Mom was impressed. Yara's so good at managing all the boring details, Raquel had told everyone at the last family dinner. It's like she was made for this. If she only knew. What about the guest list? Mom asked, spreading out papers. Have you finished the final count? Raquel beamed. 212. We invited everyone who matters. Including, I noticed, scanning the list, my entire former department from the museum, my old professors. Everyone who'd watched Peyton propose to me at last year's Preservation Society gala. That's quite a lot of people, I said mildly, adding another column to my spreadsheet. The estate hasn't hosted an event this size in years. Well, we want it to be spectacular, Mom replied. Oh, and Peyton's law firm partners are all coming. Won't that be lovely? Spectacular, I echoed, thinking of the per-person fee clause in the estate contract I'd quietly drafted. The front door opened, and Peyton walked in. He still hadn't mastered looking me in the eye. Hey, everyone, he called out, making a beeline for Raquel. How's the planning going? Your bride is very specific, the florist said diplomatically. That's my girl. He kissed Raquel's cheek. Always knows exactly what she wants. I kept typing, remembering how he'd said the same thing about me once. The memory tasted bitter. Yara, he said suddenly. Can we talk? About the budget? Now? I looked up. Just logistics. Since you're handling everything, we stepped into the hallway. I could feel Raquel watching through the doorway. Look, he started, I know this is awkward. Do you need something specific? I cut him off. I have vendor contracts to review. He shifted uncomfortably. The payments, they seem high. Premium venues have premium prices. But it's your family's estate. I smiled thinly. Everything has a cost, Peyton. You taught me that. Back in the dining room, Raquel was showing Mom her latest idea. We'll have the rehearsal dinner in Grandpa Fred's library. I found his old war medal. The silver one? I thought I could wear it as my something borrowed. The room went quiet. Even Mom looked uncertain. That medal meant a lot to your grandfather, she said carefully. Maybe we should choose something else. But it's perfect, Raquel insisted. And Yara doesn't mind, right? All eyes turned to me. I thought of Grandpa Fred showing me that medal, telling me the story behind it, trusting me to understand its value. Whatever you want, I said smoothly. It's your special day. Later, after everyone left, I was photographing contracts when Rosalind appeared. What are you planning? She asked quietly. I showed her my spreadsheet. Her eyes widened at the total. That's the exact cost of betrayal, I finished. Plus interest. They'll never be able to pay this. That's the point. I pulled out my phone, showing her the guest list. Look who they invited. She scrolled through the names. These are all your people, from your old life with Peyton. They're not just inviting guests to a wedding, I said. They're inviting witnesses to a public execution. They just don't know who's yet. Rosalind was quiet for a moment. You know what the worst part is? They actually think you're helping them. I am helping them, I said, closing my laptop. I'm helping them learn exactly what it costs to take something that doesn't belong to them. And the medal? I thought of the library, of Grandpa Fred's voice, of all the things he'd left in my care. Some borrowed things, I said softly, were never meant to be taken. You're really going through with this? Rosalind asked, watching me sort through papers in Grandpa Fred's study. The wedding was 2 days away, and the estate hummed with activity. Why wouldn't I? Because it's going to blow up the entire family. I held up the final invoice. They did that themselves. I'm just sending the bill. The door opened and Mom bustled in, trailing wedding planners. Yara, darling, we need to discuss the rehearsal dinner setup. The library needs... She stopped, staring at me behind Grandpa Fred's desk. What are you doing in here? Final preparations, I said smoothly. Making sure everything's perfect. You shouldn't sit there, she said sharply. That was your grandfather's place. Funny how everyone remembers that now, I replied, not moving. When Raquel wanted his medal, nobody seemed concerned about his place. Mom's face tightened. Don't start, Yara. Not now. Everything's going so well. Is it? I smiled. How's the budget looking? That's being handled. She turned to the wedding planners. Let's check the dining room instead. After they left, Rosalind let out a low whistle. They really have no idea, do they? They never do. I pulled out my phone, showing her the message from Mark. Everything's ready for the ceremony. You're going to do it during the actual vows? When else? During the part about speak now or forever hold your peace? She laughed, then grew serious. Have you thought about after? What this will do to you? Before I could answer, there was a knock. Peyton stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. Can we talk? He asked. Alone? Rosalind squeezed my shoulder as she left. I stayed behind the desk, watching him fidget. You look comfortable there, he said finally. I am. Did you need something? He stepped closer. I know what you're doing, Yara. Planning your wedding? That's what everyone wanted, right? The contracts, the vendors, the way you're handling everything. You're up to something. I leaned back in Grandpa Fred's chair. Paranoid, Peyton? That's not like you. Usually you're so confident. I know you're hurt. Hurt? I cut him off. You think this is about being hurt? We never meant... To what? To fuck my sister? To let my whole family cover it up? To use my grandfather's home for your wedding? He flinched. I came to apologize. No, I said quietly. You came because you're scared. Because something feels wrong, but you can't figure out what. Because you know me, Peyton, better than they do, and you know I don't just let things go. What are you planning? I stood up. You'll find out at the perfect moment, just like I did. Later that night, during the rehearsal dinner, I watched Raquel parade around the library wearing Grandpa Fred's medal. She was showing it off to guests, telling them how special it was to honor family history this way. I think I'm going to be sick, Rosalind muttered beside me. Not yet, I said, checking my phone. A message from Mark. Documents prepared. Delivery arranged for ceremony. Mom clinked her glass, calling for attention. I'd like to thank everyone for being here, especially Yara, who has been so wonderful about everything. Such a good sister, helping make this all possible. The room applauded. Raquel beamed. Yes, thank you, sis. We couldn't have done this without you. I raised my glass, thinking of the documents waiting to be delivered, of the bills about to come due, of the truth about to explode in their faces. To the happy couple, I said, may you get exactly what you deserve. Later, alone in the study, I touched Grandpa Fred's desk one last time. Tomorrow, everything would change. The estate would be revealed as mine. The bills would come due. The family would implode. You were right, Grandpa, I whispered. Sometimes being strong means being silent until the perfect moment. My phone buzzed. Another message from Mark. All set for tomorrow. Are you sure about this? I typed back one word. Absolutely. The stage was set. The players were ready. And tomorrow, during their perfect vows, they'd learn what it really means to pay your debts. The wedding was perfect. Of course it was. I'd made sure of it. 200 guests filled the estate's garden, watching Raquel float down the aisle in her designer dress. Grandpa Fred's medal gleamed on her chest, catching the sunlight. I sat in the front row, next to Mom, wearing the exact shade of sage green Raquel had chosen for the family. "You look lovely," Mom whispered, squeezing my hand. "Thank you for making this day so special." I squeezed back, checking my watch. 20 minutes until the delivery. Peyton stood at the altar, but his eyes kept darting to me. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know what. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began. Raquel started her vows, tears streaming down her face. "I never expected to find love like this," she said, her voice trembling. "Sometimes the heart knows better than the head. Sometimes you have to be brave enough to follow your destiny, no matter who it hurts." Several guests shifted uncomfortably. They all knew who I was, what had happened. "The path to true love isn't always straight," Raquel continued, clutching Peyton's hands. "But when it's real, it's worth fighting for, worth any price." I smiled. Any price. Perfect. Just as Peyton began his vows, a man in a courier's uniform walked purposefully down the aisle. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Excuse me," he said loudly. "I have an urgent delivery for the wedding party, from Ms. Yara." Mom grabbed my arm. "What is this?" I stood up, smoothing my dress. "My wedding gift." The courier handed the large envelope to the officiant, who looked uncertain. "Open it," I said clearly. "Please, I insist." Raquel's face had gone pale. Peyton looked like he might be sick. The officiant pulled out the papers. His eyes widened as he read. "This appears to be an invoice for $174,000. Gasps from the crowd. Mom's grip on my arm tightened painfully. "Keep reading," I said. "And property documents? A deed to the estate?" "The estate that I own," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent garden. "Solely and completely for the past 3 years. Since Grandpa Fred died and left it to me. Just me." "That's impossible," Dad started to say, but I cut him off. "The invoice covers venue rental, catering, staff, and emotional damages. Due immediately." I turned to Raquel and Peyton. "Oh, and there's one more page." The officiant's hands shook as he read the final document. "An eviction notice?" "Effective at the end of this event," I confirmed, which, given the circumstances, I'd say is now. Chaos erupted. Mom started screaming. Dad jumped up, demanding to see the papers. Peyton's law partners huddled together, examining the documents the officiant had dropped. "You can't do this!" Raquel shrieked, ripping Grandpa Fred's medal off and throwing it at me. "This is our wedding." "No," I said, catching the medal. "This is my property." "And you're all trespassing." "The catering," Mom gasped, seeing the servers already packing up. "The reception." "My contractors," I explained. "They work for me, not you." Always did. Guests were standing now, phones out, recording everything. I saw my old colleagues from the museum nodding approvingly, my former professors looking grimly satisfied. "You planned this," Peyton said hoarsely. "All along, the contracts, the vendors." "I learned from the best," I replied. "About taking things that don't belong to you." Security guards, my security guards, appeared at the garden entrances. "Ms. Yara," one called out. "Should we begin evacuating the premises?" I checked my watch again. Give them 30 minutes to clear out. Except family, they can have an hour for old time's sake. As I walked away, Rosalind fell into step beside me. That was worth every penny, I finished, clutching Grandpa Fred's medal. Want to watch from the library? We climbed the stairs to his study, looking down at the pandemonium below. Guests scrambling to leave, Raquel crying in her perfect dress, Mom and Dad arguing with the security guards, Peyton standing alone at the altar, staring up at me. To the happy couple, I murmured, raising an imaginary glass. The bill is due. You've lost your mind. Mom's voice echoed through the library as she burst in, mascara streaking down her face. How could you do this to your sister? The same way you all did it to me. I sat in Grandpa Fred's chair, the medal lying on the desk between us. Easily, without hesitation, Dad appeared behind her, red-faced and panting. The estate was meant for the family. No, I corrected him. It was meant for someone who would protect it. Grandpa Fred chose me 20 years ago. You manipulated him, Mom accused. You always were his favorite, because I was the only one who cared. I slammed my hand on the desk. The only one who listened to his stories, who learned the history, who understood what this place meant. Raquel stormed in, her white dress muddy at the hem. You've ruined everything. The guests are leaving, the caterers are gone, and Peyton's partners are talking about liability. Liability? I smiled. They should be. The invoice isn't a suggestion. We can't pay that, she shrieked. Then I guess you'll have to figure something out. Like I had to figure out where to live when you took my fiancé. That was different. You're right, I cut her off. That was personal. This is business. Peyton appeared in the doorway, his tie loose. The lawyers say the documents are ironclad. She owns everything. Finally figured that out? Rosalind spoke up from her corner. Took you long enough. You knew? Mom whirled on her. You helped her? Someone had to be on her side. Security appeared at the door. Ms. Yara, the 45-minute mark. Should we begin escorting the family out? Give them a moment, I said. They're processing. Processing? Dad exploded. You've destroyed this family. No, I stood up slowly. You did that when you chose sides. When you decided my pain was acceptable collateral damage. When you told me to be the bigger person while letting them take everything from me. We can fix this, Mom pleaded. We're family. Family doesn't do what you did. I picked up the medal. Family doesn't wear dead men's honors while dishonoring their memory. Raquel started crying again. What do you want from us? Nothing. Not anymore. I want you to leave. All of you. And I want you to remember this moment every time you tell the story of how your perfect wedding fell apart. The press will hear about this, Mom threatened. I hope they do. I have copies of everything. The timeline of the affair, the family's cover-up, the illegal use of property should make fascinating headlines. Peyton stepped forward. Yara, please, we can talk about this. Like you talked to me before sleeping with my sister? I nodded to security. Time's up. They moved efficiently, herding my family toward the door. Mom kept looking back as if waiting for me to change my mind. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Raquel clung to Peyton, sobbing about ruined dreams. When they reached the foyer, I called out, "One more thing." They turned. "The invoice is due in 30 days. After that, it goes to collections." I smiled. I hear that can get messy. After they left, Rosalind poured 2 glasses of champagne from the abandoned wedding supply. You really did it, she said, handing me one. You actually went through with it. They thought I was weak, I replied, watching through the window as cars pulled away. They thought I was safe. You're trending on Twitter, she noted, checking her phone. Someone filmed the whole thing. People are calling you a legend. I sank back into Grandpa Fred's chair, suddenly exhausted. What happens now? Now? She raised her glass. Now you own one of the most prestigious historical estates in the region. Now you're free of toxic family obligations. Now you start over. They'll never forgive me. That's the point. You're not asking for forgiveness. She gestured around the library. This is who you were meant to be, the person your grandfather saw when everyone else was looking at Raquel. I touched the metal, feeling its weight. To new beginnings? To karma, she corrected. And to the bigger person they never saw coming. Through the window, I watched the last car disappear down the driveway. The estate was quiet now. Mine. Finally, completely mine. And somewhere, I was sure, Grandpa Fred was smiling. The notifications wouldn't stop. 3 days after the wedding, my phone buzzed constantly with messages, social media tags, and news alerts. The video had gone viral, spawning countless reactions and hot takes. I sat in my car, parked outside Grandpa Fred's grave, scrolling through them. "You're a hero," one comment read. "Cold-blooded revenge queen," said another. "This is what happens when you mess with the wrong sister." Raquel had posted a tearful Instagram story. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. Some people can't handle seeing others happy. Mom left another voicemail. "The bank won't approve an emergency loan. Your father's beside himself. Please call us." Peyton tried texting. "Can we meet? Just to talk? This isn't who you are." I deleted them all. A tap on my window made me jump. Rosalind stood there with 2 coffee cups. "Thought I'd find you here," she said, climbing into the passenger seat. "You okay?" "Define okay." I took one of the coffees. "Have you seen the latest? That your sister started a GoFundMe for the invoice?" "Yeah, it's not going well." I laughed hollowly. "How much has she raised?" $300. Mostly from people commenting karma with their donations. We sat in silence, watching leaves scatter across the cemetery grounds. "Your mom called me," Rosalind said finally. "Begged me to convince you to drop the invoice. Said it would destroy their credit, their reputation. Funny how consequences work. Peyton's firm is distancing themselves from him. Apparently they don't like associates who get caught in viral scandal videos." I touched the coffee cup, still warm. "Do you think I went too far? Do you?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. Mark's name flashed on the screen. "Yara," he said when I answered. "They're trying to contest the trust. Your father's claiming undue influence." "Let them try," I replied. "We have 20 years of documentation. Grandpa Fred knew exactly what he was doing." "They've hired Patricia Waters." I sat up straighter, the city's most aggressive family law attorney. "Good," I said. "Let them waste more money they don't have." After hanging up, I finally got out of the car. Rosalind followed me to Grandpa Fred's grave, where fresh flowers lay, probably from my last visit. "You know what's weird?" I said, touching the headstone. "Everyone keeps saying this isn't like me, that I've changed. But maybe this is who I always was. Maybe they just never noticed." "They noticed," Rosalind replied. "They just preferred you quiet, compliant, taking care of everyone else's messes." My phone buzzed again. A news alert. "Viral wedding revenge. Sister speaks out." Raquel's tear-stained face filled the screen as she described how I'd orchestrated a campaign of cruelty. "Turn it off," Rosalind said gently. "You don't need to watch that." "Yes, I do." I played the clip. "My sister needs help," Raquel sobbed to the reporter. "This isn't about the estate or the wedding. She's clearly having some kind of breakdown." The camera panned to Mom, nodding sympathetically. "We just want her to come home, to let us help her heal." I turned it off, feeling sick. They still don't get it, Rosalind observed. They think this is about you being broken, not about them breaking you. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am broken. No, she grabbed my shoulders. You're not broken. You're awake. There's a difference. My phone buzzed yet again. A text from an unknown number. You did what many of us wish we could. Thank you for showing us it's okay to stand up for ourselves. Then another. Watched my sister marry my ex last year. Wish I'd had your courage. And another. My family always told me to be the bigger person too, until I disappeared completely. Thank you for being visible. Tears blurred my vision as more messages poured in. Not hate, not judgment, understanding. See? Rosalind said softly. You're not alone. I looked at Grandpa Fred's grave one last time. He used to say that being strong means standing your ground, even when you're standing alone. But you're not alone. She linked her arm through mine. And they're the ones who should be afraid of being lonely. We walked back to the car as the sun set, casting long shadows across the cemetery. My phone kept buzzing, but for the first time in days, I didn't feel the need to look. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. And sometimes the biggest person in the room is the one everyone underestimated. And this is the original library, I told the tour group, opening the heavy doors, where one of the estate's most notable events took place. A woman raised her hand. Is this where the viral wedding happened? I smiled. The very room. Now it's part of our historical preservation program. The estate had transformed. Where wedding chaos once reigned, school groups now learned about architecture. Where Raquel once paraded in Grandpa Fred's medal, genuine military honors were respectfully displayed. After the tour, Rosalind waited in the study with coffee and a stack of papers. The final notice came back undelivered, she said. Your parents moved again. Third time this year. I sorted through the mail. Any word from Raquel? Last I heard, she and Peyton were fighting over who should pay the credit card debt from the wedding. He's claiming she pressured him into the expensive venue, I laughed. If they only knew how much worse it could have been, I could have charged them double. Speaking of charges, she handed me a newspaper. You made the business section. The headline read, Hamilton Estate Preservation Project receives national grant. Below was a photo of me in Grandpa Fred's study, wearing his medal properly mounted on a display cushion. He'd be proud, Rosalind said quietly. A knock interrupted us. Mark stood in the doorway looking pleased. The last appeal was denied, he announced. The trust stands. It's finally over. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. They're done fighting? They're done everything. The invoice went to collections, their credit is ruined, and that viral video follows them everywhere. They've run out of options. And resources, Rosalind added. My phone buzzed, a text from Mum. Please, we're your family. I showed it to Rosalind and Mark. They still don't understand. Want me to block the number? Rosalind offered. No. I put the phone away. Let them reach into the void. Sometimes silence is the best answer. Mark cleared his throat. There is one more thing. Your father's trying to sell his war memorabilia collection to cover debts, including some items that belong to Fred. Let me guess. They want me to buy it? He nodded. I walked to the display case where Grandpa Fred's medal sat. Tell them no. Those memories aren't for sale. After they left, I sat at the desk, my desk now, and opened my laptop. The estate's website showed upcoming events, historical lectures, preservation workshops, school programs, everything Grandpa Fred would have wanted. A comment notification popped up on the viral video, which had become something of a legend. Watching this again, still satisfying, still necessary. Thank you for showing us what real strength looks like. The door creaked. A young girl from the tour group stood there, wide-eyed. Sorry, she said quickly. I got separated from my class, but are you her? The one from the video? I am. She twisted her hands. My big sister is marrying my best friend next month. They've been sneaking around. Everyone says I should be happy for them. I stood up, really looking at her, seeing myself at that age, being told to be quiet, to be good, to be small. Come here, I said. Let me show you something. I led her to the window overlooking the gardens where the wedding had imploded. People will tell you that love excuses betrayal, that family means accepting pain, that being the bigger person means making yourself smaller. I turned to face her. They're wrong. How do you know? Because sometimes the biggest person in the room isn't the one making the most noise. It's the one who knows their own worth. After she left, I touched Grandpa Fred's medal one last time. The estate was quiet, but not with the silence of secrets anymore. Now it was the quiet of peace, of justice, of knowing exactly who you are and what you deserve. Some people find forgiveness, some find revenge. I found something better. I found myself, and that, more than any revenge, was worth everything.